Chapter 4. My pinky senses are tingling. There, that should do it. Twilight pulled her horn away from the electronic screens, the rosy glow around her horn slowly fading. She sat in the posterior white lab coat alongside Bruce and Tony. What is it? Bruce asked, coming over beside her. I've enchanned one of your energy tracking systems so that it tracks magic instead. The unicorn replied, Magic uses a specific type of energy, and since this tracker follows energy, it was relatively simple to modify it to track magical energy. A proud smile slipped onto her face. Wherever Discord and Loki are, this should pick up the high magic levels. Great, Tony stated, clapping his hands together. Now I can get back to this. He sat himself on the table and began fiddling with one of the touchscreens. Mr. Stark? Twilight gazed at the man in confusion. What exactly are you doing? Tony looked up for a brief moment. As of right now, I am hacking into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s database. I want to see if they have any useful information about you and your friends. He turned his attention back to the screen. Within moments, I will have gained access to all of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s most classified files. Bruce groaned. Oh, not this again. But wouldn't you get in trouble? Twilight asked. It's not that big of a deal, Tony dismissed casually. I like to think that it's S.H.I.E.L.D.'s fault from keeping those secrets from us, actually. Twilight shook her head. But, Mr. Stark, don't bother, Bruce interrupted. Once he gets started on something, you can't stop him. Thank you, Doctor, for taking my side, Tony thanked, concentrating on the screen. Almost got it. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the helicarrier, Fluttershy, Thor, Rainbow Dash, Natasha, and Rarity all stood around the conference table, where they had first met. All was silent except for the electronic sounds of the controls of the helicarrier below them. Rainbow Dash groaned, flopping back in her seat. Oh, this is so boring. When are we actually going to do some awesome fighting or something? I do not think it is wise to plunge headlong into battle, Thor stated. Loki is a formidable opponent, and not one to be toyed with. And remember what happened the last time we fought Discord? Fluttershy reminded the Rainbow Mane Pegasus quietly. Rainbow rolled her eyes. So we can do better this time. I'm sick of all this waiting around. Rainbow Dash, darling, it's only been 10 minutes, Rarity reprimanded. Ugh, fine, whatever. I'm going out for a fly. Rainbow Dash hopped out of her seat, striding out of the room in the direction of one of the hangars. The four who were left at the table stared after the rainbow-colored mane. After a few moments, Natasha asked, So, is she always like this? Rarity sighed. Yes, Rainbow Dash can be quite impatient at times. Natasha cocked her head, analyzing the blue Pegasus and her personality. I see. Suddenly, all the screens flashed red, casting a strange scarlet glow around the room. Director, a crew member called. Someone is trying to hack into our system. Thor, Fluttershy, Natasha, and Rarity all rushed to the railing, gazing down at the scene below them. Keep the security systems intact, Fury barked. Protect the classified files at all costs. What's going on? Fluttershy inquired softly, shrinking back at Fury's loud tone. Someone is trying to steal S.H.I.E.L.D.'s information. Natasha explained in terms she hoped the Pegasus would understand. The Russian agent rolled her eyes. I can only think of one person who would be crazy enough to do that. Twice. Twilight stared over Tony's shoulder at the screen. The man had successfully hacked into the database, showing the lab trio dozens of secrets from S.H.I.E.L.D. The unicorn would have informed the others if it weren't for that specific project that caught her attention. Suddenly, the door of the lab burst open, and Natasha, Rarity, Fluttershy, and Thor all came charging in. Stark, what do you think you're doing? Natasha exclaimed angrily. This is the second time this has happened. Well, then S.H.I.E.L.D. needs to strengthen its firewalls, Tony remarked casually. Pardon me, Mr. Stark, but why in Equestria are you stealing S.H.I.E.L.D.'s information? Rarity questioned. That is absolutely unacceptable behavior from someone as high class as you. Oh, come on, it's just a bit of harmless investigation, Tony defended. Harmless to you, maybe, a voice said from the doorway. Nick Fury walked into the lab, an irate expression on his face. Stark, we have been over this. You are not to be hacking into S.H.I.E.L.D.'s classified information. Tony gave a half-hearted shrug of acknowledgement, continuing to pursue the files alongside Bruce and Twilight. Director, would you mind telling us what this Project Ponies is? He inquired suddenly. Project Ponies is a covert operation not to be disclosed to persons not involved with the project, Nick retorted. Well, I think we are considered involved in this project, seeing as all of our pony accomplices' names are listed here, Bruce replied, his voice rising suddenly. Rarity's eyebrows followed together in confusion at his statement, and Fluttershy shrieked back in fear. Our names? She stuttered out. Yep, Tony replied. He stepped closer to Nick, a serious, threatening expression on his face. I want to know what S.H.I.E.L.D. has to do with these ponies, Director. S.H.I.E.L.D. had been too meddlesome for his liking in the past, and he wanted to stop that above all else. Nick sighed. Project Ponies is the potential observation network of interworld equestrian system. He finally explained. It is a project developed to search for possible assistance of S.H.I.E.L.D. and to spy on potential allies or enemies. The system spans over many worlds in the universe, including Equestria. Twilight's eyebrows knit together as she tapped a file labeled Agents on the screen with her hoof. Immediately, a picture of a familiar gray Pegasus with a blonde mane and tail and cross eyes appeared. Fluttershy's eyes widened. Derpy hooves? Now, what in Equestria is she doing in that file? Rarity wondered. Derpy Hooves is a cover name for Agent Ditsy Doo, Nick informed them. Agent Doo was assigned to Ponyville, which is now S.H.I.E.L.D., which is how S.H.I.E.L.D. and Princess Celestia know so much about the events there. Well, that explains a lot. Well, that explains a lot, Twilight remarked dryly. This perfectly explains the princess's uncanny ability to appear in Ponyville precisely at the opportune moment. It also helped to understand Ditsy Doo's habit of appearing in the strangest of places, including Fluttershy's chicken coop or in the apple bobbing tab at the Nightmare Night celebration. I can't believe Derpy of all ponies would be a spy, Fluttershy whispered, astonished. Suddenly, the trackers in the room started frantically beeping. Twilight scurried over to the magical tracker. The magic levels are off the charts. So are the energy readings, Bruce added, clicking the other tracker. Hey, every pony! All occupants in the lab whirled around to see Pinkie Pie in the hallway, shaking and shuddering. Behind her, Applejack, Clint, and Steve, all apparently chasing the bouncing pink pony. Pinkie seemed to shudder violently for a moment before her knees suddenly twitched together and she fell flat on her face. Pinkie Pie, what in tarnations was that? Applejack asked. I don't know, Applejack, the pink pony honestly replied. I never felt that sense before. I've never felt that pinky sense before. Steve cocked his head. What's pinky sense? No. Steve cocked his head. Wait, pinky sense? That's Pinky's psychic ability to predict what happens in the near future based upon certain motions her body makes, Twilight explained. Though if she has never felt that particular sign before, I'm not sure what it means. Well, the shudder does usually mean a doozy's about to happen, right, darling? Rarity inquired. Yep, Pinky replied. But the knee twitch usually means something scary is about to happen. And I don't know what the failing down means. Pinky trailed off as she began to shake violently once more, moving down the hall. Maybe it means that a really bad and really scary doozy is about to happen then, Fluttershy offered, evidently frightened by the protest. I don't know, Fluttershy, Twilight replied. But I'm not sure I want to know. Rainbow Dash walked into one of the open hangars of the helicarrier, smiling as she breathed in the fresh air. Rainbow picked up a spare comlink before activating her suit. The armor swiftly clicked into place within moments. Rainbow Dash was soaring beside the helicarrier, rocketing through the clouds at breakneck speed. Woohoo! She whooped as she whirled around a cloud. Now, that is what I'm talking about. The armored Pegasus pulled off a few loop-de-loops before slowing down a bit. Man, that was awesome! Twilight cheered. Rainbow cheered to herself. Her cheery mood soon dissipated as she spotted a strange pink object on the horizon. She pulled out her boosters, speeding toward the unknown object. The Pegasus hadn't even traveled a mile before she could identify the objects. Hesitantly, she put her hooves to full power before shooting back towards the helicarrier. As she flew, Rainbow Dash turned on the comm link that she had borrowed on. Guys, I think I found Discord and Loki. Chapter 5. Rainbow Dash's voice echoed through the halls of the helicarrier. Pinkie Pie's pinky sense abruptly stopped, and she, Applejack, Clint, and Steve joined the others in the lab. The Avengers and Pony stared at each other, the same determined look plastered on their faces. Nick gazed at the occupants of the room. Gentlemen, ladies, he addressed, you're up. We're on it, Director. Steve gave a swift nod before striding out the door, closely followed by Natasha, Clint, Bruce, Thor, and Tony. Nick turned to the ponies. I believe the princess sent you 6 some special items I think you'll find most useful. Nick stared, exiting the room. Twilight raised her eyebrows in confusion before walking out the lab. Rarity, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and Applejack followed. Oh my, Fluttershy meekly stuttered. I have a very bad feeling about this. Twilight and company trotted through the halls. Eventually, they reached 2 sets of doors. One had a sign reading Avengers Suit Room, while the other was labeled simply with ponies. Naturally, the 5 entered the latter room. Twilight, Rarity, Applejack, Fluttershy, and Pinkie Pie found themselves inside a central chamber with various hallways branching off from the main room, each with a name labeled above the entryway. Each pony had identical curious
and awe-struck expressions on their faces as they each went into their respective halls. At the end of each hall stood a glass case holding the supplies the ponies would need for battle. Rarity let out an incredibly excited gasp when she saw her suit. It was a fairly simple black jumpsuit made of a fine, very flexible, slightly shiny material. Around the sleeves of the two front forelegs were long, thin, electric blue gems. A utility belt fastened around her waist, a beautiful ruby as its buckle. In the holsters of the belt were two weapons crafted like guns, except they fired an endless stream of small hard gems, much like the ones around her hooves. It didn't take Rarity long to discover how to use the gem weapons, and the white unicorn quickly suited up. Twilight, much to her surprise, found the Mare Duel suit awaiting her at the end of the hall. Thankfully, it did not have the hat or mask, which frankly limited her magic ability. Also, the large purple collar had been removed, and the M clasp on the dark cape had been changed to a six-pointed star, matching Twilight's cutie mark. The lavender unicorn donned the guise, smiling as she remembered her time as a hero. This is just like fixing the dam, she told herself, except this time we're fighting alien creatures and Celestia knows what Discord has planned for us. Twilight giggled nervously. Yep, nothing to fear. Pinkie Pie's suit was a simple black vest with lines of purple racing around it, forming the shapes of balloons and other various party things. She also had a utility belt and a brand new large cylinder quiver with her cutie mark embellished on it, filled to the capacity with her plunger arrows and other various prank arrows. A large grin spread out on Pinkie Pie's face as she pulled out an arrow that would explode confetti. Oh, this is going to be super duper fun. Oh, please don't let me get some crazy colorful suit, Applejack pleaded silently. She had seen Captain America's suit, and though it did suit him nicely, she didn't want to end up in some suit like his. It just looked too darn uncomfortable and silly. The Earth pony nearly flopped down with relief when she saw her suit. It was quite simple. Just a green-colored collar and a bow tie. And a bolo tie. The pin in the shape of an apple, like her gala dress. She also had a simple utility belt, a long, sturdy lasso at her side. Fluttershy was absolutely frightened. She wasn't sure she could go up against those big alien fighters again. The buttered-colored Pegasus slowly walked into her hall, not sure of what she would find. To her surprise, all she saw was a letter from Princess Celestia. Have courage, Fluttershy, it read. Your friends need your help, and though you may not know it, you have a great strength within you to protect them. Reading it made the smallest of smiles fit across Fluttershy's face, and she squared her shoulders, determined to try to help her friends. The five met up with Rainbow Dash and the Avengers in the main hangar, where the group split into two Quidjets. Thor, Twilight, Pinkie Pie, and Bruce on one, with Clint as the pilot, and Rarity, Steve, Applejack, and Fluttershy on the other, with Natasha piloting. Tony and Rainbow zipped beside the two Quidjets in their respective suits, no doubt trying to race each other. Fluttershy looked rather uneasy, staring anxiously at the oncoming storm of pink clouds. Are you all right, Sugar Cube? Applejack asked, coming over to her. I'm okay, the Pegasus replied softly. Just nervous. Oh, that's quite all right, darling, Rarity assured her. We're all nervous. Fluttershy cocked her head to the side. You are? Rarity, Applejack, and even Steve nodded their heads. Just know that we're right here for you, Applejack stated. Okay, Fluttershy nodded, rising herself to her hooves. I can do this. I can do this. Natasha turned to face them from the pilot seat. Guys, we're almost there. The city was in a horrible shape. The Chutara swarmed the streets, accompanied with several monstrous leviathans, and things that could only be of Discord's doing. And to top it off, chocolate rain poured from the sky from those incredibly pesky cotton candy clouds. Though hidden by her mask, Rainbow's face lit up with a huge smile. All right, let's get this party started, she whooped, diving into the fray. Couldn't have said it better myself, Dash, Tony stated, following her down. He then tuned in to the comlinks of the others. Hey guys, you coming in or what? Applejack jumped at the voice in her ear. What in tarnations? Hold on, Stark. We're almost there, Natasha replied, steering the Quidjet into the streets. Hey, Tony, watch out, Rainbow Dash shouted, zooming across the street. A leviathan straight on her tail. Tony quickly sprang to her aid, flying right beside the great metal beast. He fired several blasts at the creature, scoring direct hits to the side. Suddenly, Rainbow shot into a nosedive, soaring straight to the ground. The Leviathan followed suit. But at the last minute, Rainbow shot upward out of the dive, is damaged from Tony's attacks. Couldn't pull up in time and crashed headlong into the street. And that is how you pull off a fantastic Philly flash. The Iron Mare smirked proudly. Good move, Tony commented, flying to Rainbow Dash's side. The two Quidjets landed beside the wreckage, and the Avengers began climbing out of the jets. As Tony and Rainbow touched down. All right, Capsicle, what's the plan? Steve rolled his eyes at Tony's nickname for him. Well, the first thing we need to do is get rid of those clouds, he replied. I'll take care of that, Applejack replied, recalling how she had done it the first time Discord had returned. Rainbow, Tony, can you crowd up those clouds next to that building over yonder? We're on AJ, Rainbow replied, giving her friend a salute before zooming off with Tony. Twilight, could you teleport me up to the top of that building? Applejack asked. Of course, Applejack, Twilight answered. The unicorn's horn glowed, and in a flash of rosy red light, Applejack had teleported to the top of the building. The orange pony galloped to the corner of the building. Pulling out her rope, she twirled the lasso high into the air and successfully looped it around the combat groups of clouds. Holding the rope sturdy in her teeth, Applejack leapt off the building, floating down to the ground with the clouds. She quickly tied the end of the rope to the base of a lamppost, pushing the clouds out of the way. There! Applejack panted, wiping sweat off her forehead. Done! Great work, Applejack, Steve complimented. He turned to the others. All right, Stark, Rainbow Dash, Thor, you three take care of those leviathans. We're on it, Tony replied, striking across the sky. Thor gave the captain a swift nod before whirling his hammer and soaring onto the backs of one of the beasts. Applejack turned to Twilight. Twi, you need to use your magic to help us whatever Discord's got for us. She stated, dancing buffaloes, salt, rose, those sorts of things. You got it, Applejack. Twilight galloped off, sending magic bolts at any Chutara that came her way. Pinkie Pie, use your arrows to cover us from the ground. Pinkie Pie gave the captain a salute before speeding off in a pink blur. Clint, you're our sniper. Steve continued. Cover us from the air. Clint nodded, firing a grappling arrow into the nearest building and zipping up to the rooftop.
Natasha, Rarity, Applejack, and I will fight on the ground. The police have already got most of the civilians to safety, but there are a few still out there. Our most important job is to find where the Chitara are coming from and how to stop them. And Bruce? Steve turned to the doctor. Now would be a good time to suit up. Bruce nodded, the faintest smiles on his face. His muscles tensioned. His skin slowly became green as he grew in size. His shirt flying away like paper. The Hulk let out a loud roar, leaping to a passing Leviathan and pounding its head. Fluttershy, absolutely terrified by the transformation, darted behind one of the Quinjets, shivering with fear. There wasn't too much time to coax her out from under there. Though, ready or not, the battle had begun. Twilight galloped through the streets, blasting Chitara with energy bolts. Pinkie Pie was right behind her, firing several of her prank arrows at the attackers. One Chitara was frozen solid, and another had what looked like a cupcake shot through its eye. Many of them had been blasted away with her exploding confetti arrows, which seemed to be Pinkie's personal favorite. Whoa! Pinkie Pie and Twilight were thrown back as a huge stampede of long-legged rabbits trampled past them. Groaning, Twilight levitated a carrot from a produce stand beside the two ponies. Pinkie Pie, fire this out of the city, she instructed. Okie dokie, Artichoke, Pinkie Pie replied, snapping the carrot onto an arrow. Hey! She shouted, catching the rabbit's attention. Who wants this? Who wants a delicious, scrumptious, absolutely delightful carrot? All the bunnies nodded. And Pinkie Pie prided herself on her ability to deliciously describe food. Fired the carrot arrow high out of the city. Suddenly, Twilight noticed Thor struggling with a low Chitara on one of the Leviathan's backs. The purple unicorn galloped straight towards the Leviathan, her horn glowing. With a bright flash, Twilight teleported beside Thor on the great metal beast. Using her magic, Twilight wrenched one of the energy spears from a Chitara grasp, and began to strike the oncoming attackers. Thor, Twilight fought back to back, throwing various Chitara off the Leviathan. Hey, Hawkeye, Rainbow called through the comlink. How's everyone doing? We're good, Clint replied, firing an explosive arrow into one of the Chitara's hovercrafts. Twilight and Thor are taking on a squadron down in the southern part of the city. And they didn't invite me. Rainbow sighed, disappointed, soaring in the direction of a huge Leviathan. She was intercepted, however, by a full Chitara hovercraft. All right, you want to play? She taunted. Then let's play. Putting her thrusters on full power, she zipped down the street. Banking hard to the right, the Chitara, unable to duplicate the move, crashed right into a fat lamppost on the street corner. Rainbow smirked, continuing her way to Thor and Twilight. Both were battling it out with several Chitara, many falling off the back of the great beast. Thor leapt into the air, bringing his hammer down onto the Leviathan's head with full force, leaving a rather huge dent in the metal plating. Twilight lowered her horn, magenta light swirling around it. A powerful discharge of energy blasted from her horn, sending the Leviathan into the ground. Guess you two didn't need me after all, Rainbow chuckled, soaring in another direction. Meanwhile, Natasha and Rarity or battling a combination of Tutar and Dancing Buffalo beside the Quidjets. If they weren't fighting for their lives, and quite possibly the freedom of the world, Natasha would have found the situation quite amusing. The Black Widow slipped a pair of electric taser discs toward the trio of dancing buffalo. The discs catching the middle buffalo's legs. The buffalo shuddered as electrical shock as a as electrical shocked its body, knocking both of its partners down in its frenzy. Wonderful move, darling, Rarity commented, firing her gym weapons. The weapons had proven to be every bit as effective as guns, and Rarity could easily wield them with her magic. The unicorn swiftly dived out of the way as a Chitara fired at her. The bolt soared past her and beneath the Quidjet, striking the ground right beside Fluttershy, who had managed to remain hidden. The bolt nearly hit her, singeing some of her pink tail hairs. But that was enough to get the yellow Pegasus angry. Very angry. Fluttershy charged out from under the Quidjet. Her teal eyes narrowed. You make me lose? She said. I blow my fuse. Rarity's eyes widened in shock and worry. Nasty Fluttershy was about to make another appearance, and it was not going to be pretty. Pinkie Pie had joined Hawkeye up on the rooftops, both firing various types of arrows. Clint was quite impressed with Pinkie's assortment of arrows and other weapons on her utility belt. Are you giving them cake? He asked upon seeing that Pinkie Pie was throwing some cupcakes from her belt. I'm not giving them cake, Pinkie Pie replied. I'm assaulting them with cake. The pink pony paused for a moment, staring down into the fray. Hey, look! Fluttershy's fighting! You go, sister! Clint shook his head at the pony's silly antics. He swiftly fired a grappling arrow to another building, swinging onto a new rooftop. Pinkie Pie didn't seem to mind his leaving, though she was too busy assaulting the Chitara with cakes and arrows. That is quite the weaponry you have there, my little pony, a voice stated from behind her. Pinkie whirled around to see a figure clad in black and green robes standing behind her. A large golden helm on his head. You! She cried, firing an arrow at him. Loki easily dodged the arrow, walking closer to the pink pony. Yes, me. You stay away from my friends, you big fat meanie! Pinkie shouted. Loki chuckled, raising his staff. You have heart, my little pony. He smiled, pressing the tip of his staff to Pinkie's chest. The pink pony's pupils suddenly dilated, nearly filling up her whole eye. Before they were normal again. Pinkie's irises flooded with bright tesseract blue, slightly darker than her usual eye color. Her frizzy pink hair deflated, becoming straight as a board as she gazed at Loki with emotionless eyes. The god of mischief smirked. You will come with me, Miss Pie. Pinkie Pie nodded, putting away her bow. Okie dokie, Loki. Captain America ran through the streets of the city, chasing after
the serpent shadow he swore he saw. He paused at an empty intersection, staring whirlily around him. Suddenly, a serpent shape whisked past him, heading straight into a nearby alleyway. Without hesitation, Steve followed it, only to find himself at an empty dead end. "Where are you?" he demanded. "Show yourself!" "Not so loud, my dear captain," a voice chatted from the shadows. A strange lady stepped out toward Steve. Her face was quite young, yet she had fluffy white hair that fell to her shoulders. Her skin was an unusual grayish tint. She wore a long reddish brown dress, which with what seemed to be a pair of blue wings protruding from her back. "Who are you?" Steve questioned, raising his shield. "I am a fortune teller," she replied, voice soft and snake-like. "And I have a fortune to tell you." Steve shook his head. "I don't believe in that sort of thing." "But you should," the lady stated, coming closer. "For I have seen things that you have not. Why don't you come and take a peek?" She whirled her hand at one of the walls, and suddenly the blank bricks became vivid with a scene. Thor, Tony, Natasha, Bruce, Twilight, Rarity, and Fluttershy were all gathered in the lab, chatting away. "You know," Tony remarked, "I honestly have no clue why Steve is even on our team. I mean, he's nothing but dead weight." Tony's statement was met with pearls of laughter from everyone, ponies and Avengers alike. "And have you seen his outfit?" Rarity inquired. "Why, it's a fashion disaster." "We don't actually even need him on the team," Bruce stated. "He doesn't have anything that we don't already have, does he?" Well, now that I think about it, you already have superhuman strength with Thor here," Fluttershy said quietly, "and superhuman agility with the Iron Man suit. So he really doesn't have anything super special. And besides, he doesn't even know how to use half the appliances on here," Twilight added. "I mean, even I could figure out some of those things." The whole group laughed, Thor's booming laugh louder than the rest. Steve stared in shock at the scene. "So, the team doesn't want me?" he asked softly. "They laugh at me?" The lady nodded. "Your honesty and loyalty to them has never was never." The lady nodded. "Your honesty and loyalty to them was never appreciated. It's time that you left your team and go away." The colors seemed to drain from Captain America. The red, white, and blue of his suit and shield fading gray. Smirking, the lady quickly transformed to Discord, slithering off into a different part of the city. "There you are, Cap!" A relieved Applejack stood in the entryway of the alley. "We've been looking for you. We need you're needed out there in the field." She paused, looking at him.
What are you doing here, anyways? That's none of your business, Steve snapped, brushing past the orange pony. Why does the team need me? Did they suddenly run out of superheroes? He angrily strolled away, not even looking back. Well, that's odd, Applejack remarked. Was it me, or did he seem kind of grayish? Gazed out at the fight scene below, with Loki and Pinkie Pie. The Avengers and ponies were bravely battling the oncoming forces of chaos. The Dragonquist sighed. The battle had lasted for over an hour now, and this was beginning to become boring for Discord. He turned to Loki. My friend, I believe it's time to cause chaos elsewhere. Indeed, Loki replied. There is now something I must retrieve to complete our plan. But rest assured, my friend, Equestria will be yours soon enough. Discord smiled, and Midgard will be yours. He snapped his fingers, and, with a blinding flash of green light, Discord, Loki, Pinkie Pie, the Chitauri, and the Chaos disappeared. The Avengers and ponies stared around, surprised. Is it over? Twilight questioned. It seems so, Thor replied. But Loki would not give in this easily. He must be planning something. Can we discuss this? Can we discuss what he's planning on the helicarrier? Rarity questioned. I'm exhausted, and just look at my mane. Everyone seemed to be quite worn out, too. Everyone, even Rainbow Dash and Tony, stumbled onto the Quidjets, not even bothering to check their numbers. I never want to see another dancing buffalo again, Tony groaned, rubbing his temples. Bruce nodded in agreement. Wrapped in a spare coat found in the jet. Who knew fine chaos would be so darn tiring? Applejack wondered. I'm plumb tuckered out. Maybe this is going to be a lot harder than we thought, Twilight stated. I've never seen fights like this before. Not even during the Changeling invasion. I miss my nap, Rainbow Dash grumbled. They all reached the helicarrier within minutes, where Rainbow Dash promptly collapsed on the ground, taking her belated nap. Tony smiled at the snoozing pony before staring around at the group. Hey, where's the capsicle? Last I saw him, he was walking off on his own, Applejack stated. I thought he came back and got on the other jet. Clint, he wasn't on your Quidjet, Natasha asked. Clint shook his head. I thought he was on yours. Fluttershy gazed around the hangar. Has anyone seen Pinkie Pie? Suddenly, Nick Fury strolled into the hangar, an irate expression on his face. Pie and Rogers have been compromised. Chapter 6. The Return of the Party Cannon. What? A huge uproar erupted at Nick's comment. All signs of fatigue disappeared as both Avengers and ponies began to stress and worry about Pinkie Pie and the captain. Even Rainbow Dash jolted out of her nap, which is a very rare occasion, to fly straight up to the director's face and demand answers. What the hey do you mean compromised? The rainbow-mared Pegasus shouted. I mean that both Miss Pie and Rogers have left us for some reason or another, Nick explained. The problem is, we don't exactly know what happened to them and how to find them and how to bring them back to us. Well, where were they last seen? Natasha questioned. I have many of our agents doing their best to track the two, Nick answered. So far, Miss Pie was last seen working with Loki. Rarity gasped. But Pinky would never work for a ruffian like him. Not willingly, Clint spoke out, a serious expression on his face. But Loki's staff has the power to control minds. He must have used it to turn Pinky to his side, make her work for him. A distressed silence met Clint's remark. Nearly everyone's brow caused in worry. The ponies were gazing at each other, absolutely terrified for their friend. Mind control. The only time any pony had ever seen anything like it was during the Changeling invasion, when the Queen had weakened Shining Armor's mind, making him a mere shell of himself. But the ability to control the mind, to make someone work for you, was something they never dealt with before. Eventually, Tony broke the silence. Well, what about the captain? He's not under Loki's control, too, is he? No, Nick answered gravely. Rogers was last seen wandering in a few towns over. He didn't seem to be working for anyone, but he does seem to be acting the complete opposite of himself. Some witnesses have stated that the color of his suit seemed to have faded to gray. That does not seem to be one of Loki's tricks, Thor remarked. I do not believe my brother could turn anyone gray. Your brother didn't do that, Applejack responded. It was Discord. He did the same thing to all of us when we first fought him. He showed us all things that weren't true, which made us act all different from our usual selves. The Earth Pony shook her head. I should have known that was what happened when I first saw him. Discord's trick takes the color right out of you, making you look grayish. So, what should we do? Fluttershy asked timidly. At this, everyone burst into an argument, shouting out their opinions. Director Fury stated that they should focus on Discord and Loki, saving both the captain and Pinky later. This was met by many objections, mainly by Clint and Applejack, both whom were extremely close to both of their compromised victims. Tony and Rainbow Dash were already suited up, ready to jump out of the helicarrier at any moment to rescue the two. Thor was beginning to swing his hammer, wanting to find Loki and bring him back to Asgard before more harm was done. Natasha, Rarity, and Bruce were doing their best to find some middle ground, and Twilight was pacing nervously, trying to create a plan. Fluttershy, meanwhile, had cowered down close to the ground, clasping her hooves over her head in an attempt to block out the bickering. Eventually, the yellow Pegasus had heard enough. Quiet! She shouted, drawing all the attention in the room to her. Immediately, she dripped down, lowering her voice. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm trying to be more assertive. But anyhow, we need to stop arguing. Yelling at each other isn't helping any pony. A moment of silence met her remark before Bruce spoke up. Fluttershy's right. I mean, the last time we argued, we turned into a time bomb and, well, the other guy got a chance to come out. Alright, every pony. I think I've come up with a plan, Twilight remarked. Everyone gathered around her, waiting for the unicorn to speak. Applejack, Mr. Stark, Natasha, Dr. Banner, and I will go find the captain. I still remember the memory spell I used the last time to restore us, and hopefully it should work. And meanwhile, Clint, Rarity, Thor, Rainbow Dash, and Fluttershy will attempt to bring Pinkie Pie back. And if you can, find and capture Loki. Director, you will be our home base. You need to keep us updated on everything. Sounds like a plan, Twilight. Applejack replied. Everyone else seemed to agree with the orange Earth pony.